All right, guys, here we go. Welcome to another session. This is on the nitrogen cycle, which is extremely important because all plants, every single plant requires nitrogen. And if we don't have plants, then we don't have producers. And if we don't have producers, we don't have oxygen, we don't have food, we don't have energy. It's a whole thing. So consider this a super important cycle to every ecosystem, to every environment, and to your APES course. So off we go. All right, so this is our entire nitrogen cycle. I love this diagram here. However, I would highly, highly recommend that you find a way to draw this. So some key parts here. So let's start. We have a lot of nitrogen in our atmosphere. Lots of nitrogen in the atmosphere. Plants can't access it as N2. We need to turn it into nitrate because nitrate is accessible by the plants. It can go up into the plants. Also, ammonium. Ammonium can also be used to be turned into nitrite and then into nitrate and to go up into the plants. So we have to get rid of all this nitrogen, all of this nitrogen gas that's bonded, and instead break it apart through many different chemical processes and turn it into our nitrate here. We're going to do this through most of it is going to be done by our nitrogen fixing bacteria. They are so important in this entire process. Sometimes lightning will help us out a little bit, but the most of it's done by our nitrogen fixing bacteria that are in the roots of these plants, especially legumes. And when we say legumes, we're talking about beans, lots and lots of different types of beans. Those are our main products that are really going to help with this entire process. So here we go. Why do we need nitrogen? And the main piece is that it is a part of our amino acids. And as we know, amino acids are important for our DNA. And we need DNA to build our proteins, our chlorophyll, and our own DNA. So all of those are extremely important, and it is the limiting factor for plant growth. This is super important right here. So nitrogen is the limiting factor most of the time for plant growth, because if it doesn't have that nitrogen, it can't build the cells and the proteins that it needs for success. Right, as I mentioned before, we are taking the N2 and we're converting into different types of nitrogen compounds in the soil, and then eventually it will be released back as N2. Here's another version here of the nitrogen cycle. So there's many different ways to show it, but it's important that we keep track of all of these steps that are going on. So the reason why we need this cycle is because, as I mentioned, it is 78% N2. That's how nitrogen is stored. It is needed, but we can't use this N2. This N2 has too many bonds. And those of you who remember from chemistry, because of this triple bond that exists here, we would have to break that triple bond in order to use this nitrogen, which is very, very difficult to do. So we need an alternative route that allows us to access these individual nitrogens as they are. Okay, most important, right here. These are your 5 steps of the nitrogen cycle. I want to write this out a little bit. Here we go. So number 1, we got to fix it. We're going to go through nitrogen fixation, and that is going to produce ammonia. Then we can also, second step is nitrification. This is where we're going to get our nitrates and our nitrites. Third step is assimilation. Step is done by the plants. And so it's going to produce the protein and the DNA for the plants. Then we have ammonification, our fourth step, which this is going to take any decomposed matter in the soil and turn it back into that ammonia that we need. And then finally, we have the denitrification, where we release all of this back into the atmosphere as nitrogen. So an important point here that I need you to keep track of, okay? Bacteria is in charge of this one, this one, this one, and that one. So the bacteria is doing all four of those. The only one that is not done by bacteria is the assimilation. Assimilation is done by the plants, but everything else is done by bacteria. The only exception is that the ammonification can also be done by fungi, but we'll get to that as well. This is a tricky one. We need to memorize this. And I think the easiest way, I've done so much research, and the easiest way is with fix, nad, and pan. I like to think this is Peter Pan. So it's like I need to fix nad and I need to fix pan. That's what I got. Maybe you can come up with a more creative way. Let me know if you do. But this allows you to remember the 5 steps here and then the things that are produced after that, which you also need to know. Okay, quick caveat here, just so you're aware. The nitrogen fixation, so this is where we're splitting N2, combining with oxygen to form our nitrate ion. And actually, lightning can do this, which is really neat. So sometimes it does happen where lightning helps out, only about 8% of the time. But some of those compounds in the soil are coming from lightning. Okay, another super important slide. These are the stars of this entire process, are these nitrogen fixing bacteria. They are found in soil and water, and they're concentrated in the root nodules. So the root nodules, we're talking about these areas right here of any legumes. So that could be soybeans, regular beans. There's so many different versions of that. Okay, these are the 3 steps that involve, so 3 steps that are primarily due to that guy right there, to the nitrogen fixing bacteria. All right, number 1 is the nitrogen fixation. This is how we take nitrogen from the air, that is the N2 from the air, and we turn it into ammonia. That's our ammonia right there. And this is all because of these nitrogen fixing bacteria. After that, then we have our nitrification. This is going to take any ammonia in the soil, and as remember, this is ammonia right there. And it's going to turn it into nitrate so it can be absorbed by the plants because plants need the nitrate ion. And then a later step later on, I think this is actually our final step, number 5, is our denitrification. And that's just when we convert the nitrates back to the nitrogen gas. It is a complete reversal of our nitrogen fixation. So we're going to take a nitrate and we're going to turn it into our N2, and that's going to leave into the atmosphere. Atmosphere. All right. Okay, this guy here is step 4, assimilation. So this is done by the plants, most importantly. And this is the process where the plant is taking in these nitrates and these nitrites and the ammoniums. And it's using all of that to produce its amino acids, its chlorophyll, and its DNA. It is building itself off of that, the nitrogen in those compounds. So the only step done completely by the plants. After the nitrogen has been assimilated into the plant tissue, it is then passed along to other animals. So that's why we need to eat those plants to help build our proteins and to help build our DNA with that nitrogen. We are not able to assimilate, unable to assimilate. So therefore we have to eat plants to get that nitrogen. That is huge. I'll say it one more time. We must eat plants to get that nitrogen source. All right. Let's talk about our next bit here. This is ammonification. It's the second A in that fix NAD. This is ammonification. So when we have waste, animal tissue of dead animals or plants, pretty much any biomatter that exists in the soil, it's going to go through a process called ammonification. What happens is that the nitrogen in the proteins and the nucleic acid, so in the DNA, in every cell, so the nitrogen's in every single cell, in those waste products, they're going to convert into ammonia and ammonium. Just as a quick reminder, ammonia is this, ammonium is that. So the bacteria is going to help produce ammonia and ammonium from this decayed matter. This ammonia is then all broken down into nitrite and nitrate by bacteria through nitrification. Okay, so that is the entire cycle. We just hit all 5 steps. Now we're going to quickly just talk about some of the sinks and some of the sources of our nitrogen in our earth. Our biggest storage spot is going to be our atmosphere. We have so much nitrogen gas up top. It is one of the most common gases that we have on this planet. The nitrogen in the biosystem does not stay very long, so it's very short-lived. It's always being converted either down into fossil fuels or it's been being released up into the atmosphere. We are constantly adding more nitrogen with fertilizers. So this is our source of nitrogen, is fertilizer. And that helps us to gain more of that nitrogen when we don't quite have enough of it. Big thing we can talk about is actually the Ukraine war and the impact that this had on fertilizer and the ability to get that nitrogen for the agriculture for the entire globe. It was a big deal. All right, finally, a website if you need any help from there, but there you go. That is the nitrogen cycle. Biggest thing that you need to be able to remember are these 5 steps and the fix, NAD, and PAN. All right, sounds good. We'll see you later.